Day 8. Juliane's vision blurred as she stared at her arm. Maggots. Dozens of them, writhing beneath her skin. The infection was spreading. She hadn't eaten in over a week. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. The jungle canopy blocked out the sun, turning day into perpetual twilight. Every sound could be a predator. Every shadow could be death. She pulled a ring from her finger and began to dig the larvae out of her own flesh. The pain was unbearable, but pain meant she was still alive. Then, through the delirium, she saw it. Something that didn't belong in the jungle. Was she hallucinating again? This is the story of Juliane Koepcke. On Christmas Eve 1971, she fell 2 miles from the sky into the Amazon rainforest after her plane was struck by lightning. She was 17 years old. 91 people died in that crash. She was the only survivor. What happens next is considered one of the most impossible survivals in modern history. But the fall was just the beginning. The real nightmare started when she woke up. Juliane wasn't a typical teenager. Born in Lima, Peru, she'd spent most of her childhood in the Amazon. Her parents were zoologists who ran a research station deep in the rainforest called Panguana. While other kids played in parks, Juliane learned to identify venomous snakes. While they feared insects, she studied them. The jungle was her backyard. But on this particular Christmas, she wasn't in the rainforest. She was in Lima, finishing her final high school exams. December 23, 1971. Juliane and her mother Maria rushed to the airport. They were running late. The flight to Koepcke was the only way to reach her father's research station in time for Christmas. Storm warnings covered the region, but the airline insisted the plane would fly. Lanza Flight 508, a Lockheed Electra turboprop. Juliane noticed the passengers looked nervous. Dark clouds already gathered on the horizon. Her mother clutched her hand during takeoff. Juliane pressed her face against the window, watching Lima disappear beneath them. In less than an hour, they'd be landing. In less than an hour, she'd see her father. In less than an hour, Christmas would begin. She had no idea she'd never see her mother again. 25 minutes into the flight, they entered the storm. The plane shuddered. Rain hammered against the windows. Passengers gripped their armrests. The seatbelt sign flickered. Juliane looked at her mother. Maria's face had gone pale. Then came the lightning. A blinding white flash. The cabin filled with light. Juliane heard screaming. The plane tilted violently. Luggage flew through the air. Oxygen masks dropped. People were praying. The engines roared, then went silent, and Juliane was falling, still strapped to her seat, spinning through white clouds. Her mother was gone. The plane was gone. There was only wind and sky, and the certainty of death rushing toward her at terminal velocity. She woke to silence. Not peaceful silence, jungle silence, the buzz of a million insects, the distant shriek of howler monkeys. Juliane opened her eyes. Green. Everything was green. She was lying in the dirt, still strapped to her seat. The canopy was so thick she couldn't see the sky. Her right eye was swollen shut. Her collarbone was broken. She had a concussion. Deep gashes covered her arms and legs, but she was alive. She called for her mother. Her voice disappeared into the endless trees. She called again. Nothing. Juliane unbuckled herself and tried to stand. Her right knee buckled. She fell. The pain was extraordinary. She checked her body for major injuries. Everything hurt, but nothing seemed fatal. Then she noticed her glasses were missing. She was severely nearsighted. The jungle was now not just deadly, but blurred. She found one sandal. The other was gone. Her dress was torn to shreds. She had no food, no water, no supplies. She was 17 years old, injured, half-blind, and alone in the most biodiverse and dangerous rainforest on Earth. But this was only the beginning. Juliane remembered her father's most important rule. If you're lost in the Amazon, find water. Follow it downstream. All streams lead to rivers. All rivers lead to people. She listened. Through the insect noise and bird calls, she heard it. Running water. She stumbled toward the sound and found a small creek. This became her lifeline. Her path. Her only hope. She walked. Barefoot on one side, one sandal on the other. The jungle floor was a minefield. Thorns, roots, venomous ants. She moved slowly, testing each step. The creek grew wider, deeper. Good. That meant she was heading in the right direction. But the jungle fought her at every turn. Vines caught her ankles. Branches slashed her face. The canopy blocked the sun, making it impossible to track time. Was it noon? Evening? She had no idea. Day 2. No food. She tried to drink from the creek, but the water was brown with sediment. Her father had warned her about waterborne parasites, but thirst won. She drank. The water tasted like earth and rot. Day 3. Still nothing but trees and water. Her wounds had begun to smell. Infection. She knew what that meant in this heat. In this humidity. Flies had found her cuts and laid eggs. She could feel them moving under her skin. Day 4. Juliane found wreckage, a row of seats embedded in the mud. 3 passengers still strapped in. Dead. She forced herself to search for supplies. A bag of candy. She grabbed it. Then she saw her mother's belongings scattered nearby. No body, just her things. Juliane didn't stop to grieve. She couldn't. Grief was a luxury. Survival required every ounce of focus. She kept walking. Then, on day 5, everything changed. The maggots were spreading. Juliane could feel them tunneling through her arm. She counted at least 30 larvae beneath her skin. The infection was massive. She had no tools. No medicine. She tried to squeeze them out. Some came. Most didn't. The pain made her vision white out. She was also starving. The candy was long gone. She tried eating leaves, but most Amazon plants are toxic. One wrong choice could kill her faster than the jungle itself. Her body was failing. Fever set in. She shivered despite the oppressive heat. Hallucinations started. She saw rescue helicopters that weren't there. Heard voices calling her name. Her injured knee had swollen to twice its normal size. Each step was agony. The jungle was winning. She collapsed beside the creek and stared at the water rushing past. She had 2 choices. Lie down and let the forest claim her, or keep moving downstream even if it killed her. She chose movement. Always movement. Her father had taught her that stillness in the jungle means death. Predators hunt the weak and the still. She dragged herself upright and continued. 1 foot, then the other. Then the other. Over and over. A meditation of pain and stubbornness. The creek had become a river. Wide. Dark. Full of caimans and piranhas. She waded through it anyway. What did it matter now? Day 9. Through her fever and blurred vision, Juliane saw something impossible. A boat. A real boat, not a hallucination. Wooden, battered, tied to the riverbank. And beside it, a shelter. A palm thatch hut. She stumbled toward it, sobbing. Empty. But there were signs of people. Fuel cans, tools, a motor. This was a logging camp. Someone would come back. They had to. But when? She found a small container of diesel fuel. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. He'd once told her about removing botfly larvae from their dog using gasoline. It suffocated the maggots, forcing them to surface. She had diesel. Same principle. She poured it into her wounds. The pain was beyond anything she'd felt before. Worse than the fall. Worse than the infection? She screamed. But the maggots began to emerge. One by one, she pulled them out. 35 in total. The relief was immediate. She found a tarp and collapsed beneath it. For the first time in 9 days, she stopped moving. She had done everything possible. Now she could only wait and hope. What happened next would determine if she lived or died. The sound of voices woke her. Men's voices. Speaking Spanish. Juliane tried to stand but couldn't. She called out. Her voice was barely a whisper. She tried again. Louder. 3 loggers emerged from the forest and froze. They stared at this teenage girl. Emaciated. Covered in infected wounds. One sandal, torn dress. Like she was a ghost. In a way she was. The plane crash had been international news. Everyone knew there were no survivors. She spoke in Spanish, explaining who she was. Where she'd come from. They didn't believe her at first. People don't fall from the sky and live. But her desperation was real. The injuries were real. They gave her water. Food she could barely swallow. Her throat had swollen nearly shut. The loggers radioed for help. But the nearest medical facility was hours away by river. They made a decision. They would take her themselves. They placed Juliane in their boat and began the 7-hour journey downstream. She drifted in and out of consciousness. The sky opened above her. She saw blue for the first time since the fall. Birds flew overhead. The same sky she'd fallen through. The same sky that had tried to kill her. They reached a small village called Tornavista. A local pilot flew her to Koepcke, then to a hospital in Lima. Doctors couldn't believe her condition. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, broken collarbone, torn ligaments, massive infections. But alive, impossibly, miraculously alive. Her father arrived at the hospital and collapsed beside her bed. He'd spent 9 days searching the crash site. He'd found wreckage, bodies, but not his daughter, and not his wife. Maria's body was discovered weeks later. Against odds estimated at 14 million to 1, Juliane Koepcke had done the impossible. She'd survived a 2-mile fall and 11 days alone in the Amazon rainforest. Recovery took months. The physical wounds healed, but the psychological scars ran deeper. Juliane developed a fear of flying that took years to overcome. She suffered survivor's guilt, haunted by the question, why her? Why not her mother? Why not anyone else? 91 people died. Only she walked away. The weight of that survival crushed her for decades, but she didn't let it destroy her. She returned to her studies, earned a PhD in zoology, followed in her parents' footsteps, and dedicated her life to the Amazon. She eventually returned to Penguana, her family's research station, and runs it to this day. The same jungle that nearly killed her became her life's work. She says the forest isn't evil. It's indifferent. It doesn't hunt you. It simply exists. Survival depends on understanding that indifference. Experts still marvel at her story. Aviation. Specialists say the storm likely created a powerful updraft that slowed her descent. The thick canopy acted like a series of parachutes, breaking her fall branch by branch. Her seat row separated from the fuselage and spun like a helicopter seed. Physics and luck aligned in a way that almost never happens. But survival after the fall? That was all her. Her childhood in the jungle gave her the knowledge most people lack. She knew which water to drink, which insects to fear, how to move, where to go. Her story changed aviation safety protocols across South America. It inspired survival training programs. But more than that, it proved something profound about human resilience. At 17, with no equipment and catastrophic injuries, Juliane Koepcke refused to quit. She walked 11 days through hell because stopping meant death. And death was simply not an option. 35 maggots beneath her skin. 11 days without food. 2 miles falling through the sky. Juliane once said the hardest part wasn't the fall. It wasn't the pain. It wasn't the fear. It was the silence. Being completely, utterly alone. But in that silence, she found something unbreakable. The same thing that lives in all of us, waiting for the moment we need it most. The will to take one more step, and then another. Until the jungle ends, and life begins again.